Hello again, everybody. This is Craig Evans of Autism Hangout, and thank you for tuning into this Autism Hangout special report. Okay, you got the news, and the diagnosis is autism. So, who do you tell and why? If it's a child, do you tell them? Well, why or why not? And what about family and friends? Or more importantly, what about teachers? And if you're an adult, what do you do? What about the people in your life and your boss? Do you tell him? Disclosure is a huge issue, and here to help us unravel some of the mysteries behind who and when to tell is clinical psychologist and author Sarita Freedman. Welcome back, Sarita. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me again.
This disclosure issue baffles so many people. I mean, you've got the child, you've got the adult on the spectrum, and then you've got the parent when the parent first learns. So if it's okay with you, let's start talking about the parent has just learned the child has autism. What's going through their mind and what should they be considering?
Yeah. Well, aside from just the shock of the diagnosis, parents at some point have to think about the issue of telling their child at the appropriate time about their diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And there are many struggles that parents face in this regard because people don't like to be labeled. And I agree, I think labeling is not a great thing. But unfortunately, without a name to what is happening with the child or with the individual, it's very difficult to guide treatment. So it's, and also parents feel a lot of sadness about the child's diagnosis, and they don't want to make their child sad or make their child feel different. There's ambivalence and denial about the diagnosis, and then there's fear that the child will be ostracized and shunned. Mm-hmm. And these are all very valid concerns. The other big concern that I run into with families is the concern that the child's self-esteem will be affected if they know that they're different. Mm. And what I say to parents is, the child knows he's different. He knows it, and if you don't talk about it, then he begins to think that it's a big bad secret, so that there must be something really wrong with him. Hmm. I work with a lot of adults who didn't get diagnosed till later in their lives, young adulthood, even into their 50s and 60s. And what they tell me is that because they didn't know what was wrong with them, but they knew that they were different, they began to develop all kinds of negative fantasies about themselves, like, I'm retarded, or I'm psychotic, or I must be crazy. And so actually the individual's self-esteem suffers when they don't know. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you've been sick for a while and you keep going back and forth to the doctor, but they can't figure out what's wrong with you, you kind of start to wonder if you're going crazy or something, because you know that you don't feel right, but they can't figure out what it is. Mm-hmm. And when you get a name to it, even though you don't want to be sick, it does give you a sense of, okay, now I know what this is, and I can go ahead and find the right kind of treatment. Mm-hmm. So also not knowing, it can increase the individual's feelings of isolation and create all kinds of long-standing self-esteem issues.
Okay, so clearly you're feeling that disclosure to the person that is on the spectrum is a benefit. There are advantages to knowing that you're different because either you can seek out assistance or you can help explain certain characteristics.
Once you know that you're on the spectrum, you can read about it. You can develop a sense of pride from that, and also develop realistic, career, life, and family planning decisions.
Good. Sure.
You can blame yourself less for the struggles that you have. Mm-hmm. You can find mentors, people to look up to who are like you, who've been successful.
Is there a place that people can go to find more reasons as to why knowing they're on the spectrum is a very positive thing?
Yeah, in my book, there's a whole section in the self-awareness chapter.
Yeah, let's name that.
How knowing helps.
Let's name that book. What is the name of your book, too?
It's called Developing College Skills in Students with Autism and Asperger's Syndrome.
In the case of a parent, what does a parent look for before they tell a child?
Well, there's a different, depending on the child, obviously, but my barometer is when I start to sense that the child begins to be aware that they're different. And usually the kids will start saying something like, my brain doesn't work right, or I'm stupid, or I just can't think, my brain thinks too fast, or my brain is too slow. Some negative comments about themselves. I think that that's the time to begin to seriously consider telling a child.
Okay. What about friends and family at this point? Where do you start to clue them in on what's going on?
Well, part of the big problem with autism is isolation. Families of children with autism become isolated in many different ways. Oftentimes they can't, in the beginning, it's difficult to take the child out to different places because of unusual behaviors or negative behaviors. And families need a lot of support. So I really feel that talking to family members about it is something that should happen right away, so that family members can come to the support of the parents. I do believe that teachers need to know. Teachers teaching a child with autism is very different than teaching a typically developing child or a child with any other kind of a disability. So if the teacher doesn't know, he or she is going to approach the child in a way that may not be, as conducive to learning, and the child will suffer. So I think that teachers need to know too.
So in the case of a child, you were an advocate for telling people right away, disclosure, full disclosure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What about an adult? What is somebody that's 35 years of age, they've always known something's different, but they've been tested because a spouse or a friend said, find out where you are. Who do they tell if they find out they're on the spectrum?
Well, and that becomes more of a personal choice, and it depends on what is the purpose of letting people know. For example, if you're going to go on an interview and you have trouble with eye contact when you're meeting with somebody, it might be a good idea. You don't necessarily have to tell them that you have autism, but it would be a good idea to disclose to them, I just want you to know that I get a little nervous at interviews and I may not be looking at you all the time, but I am listening and I will be attentive during the interview. In the workplace, it sometimes, in order to get any kind of accommodations, you will need to disclose that you have some kind of a disability. If you don't want to use the autism or the Asperger's label, you could say that you have a learning disability of sorts. But if you have behaviors that are unusual or that are off-putting, that you have trouble controlling in the workplace or in the classroom, it really might be beneficial to disclose to the teacher or to your superiors at work what's going on.
Okay, so in the case of an adult, you would advise it's on a need-to-know basis to help possibly explain a behavior characteristic.
Yes, or a need for, like, for example, I worked with someone who really, when she wrote like emails or memos, she was never sure how it would come off to other people, and sometimes because she's so direct, it might be off-putting to somebody. And so she asked one of her colleagues if they would be willing to read the emails and help her modify them. So yeah, I think it can be very helpful.
That was just terrific. Sarita, all of that conversation was so helpful. I know you're talking about this on the speaker circuit for people that attend seminars on autism, but how can people get more information about you? What's your web address?
My web address is www.saritafreedman.com. I have a Facebook page. That would be great if you could friend me on my page. It's College on the Spectrum. And also, my book is called Developing College Skills in Students with Autism and Asperger's Syndrome, and it's published by Jessica Kingsley Publishers. It's available on their website and also at Amazon.com.
Very good. Sarita, thank you for coming to On Autism Hangout today and sharing your wealth of knowledge with this membership, because it's so helpful. All of us can thrive with autism, and we have advice such as yours.
Thanks, Craig, for having me. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you, Autism Hangout. I'll be back again soon with another special report.